They say that every city has its kingpin.
Craig Pettis.
Craig Pettis.
Craig Pettis.
Someone who walks heavy in the dark, makes the deals you never see, and prays the whispers don't turn into indictments. In the streets of Memphis, the streets need no introduction. They show you their own names in bullet holes and burned out cars. Out on Riverside in a small brick house with a mother scraping by, Craig Pettis was raised. He was 5 foot something, skinny, quiet, but he learned early that the game often spoke through silence and control. In the mid-90s, the Riverside neighborhood of South Memphis, like many places, was a product of the crack epidemic, a well-known drug trafficking area where then teenage Craig Pettis first tried his hand in the trade. Pettis, nicknamed Lil C for his stature, grew up in a small brick house on West Dyson Avenue, raised by a single mother who struggled to keep the family just above poverty. By 15, he'd been arrested with a sawed-off shotgun he brought to intimidate robbers, and at 16, he was already wrapped up in drug arrest and the shooting of a rival. In those early years, he was just one more street dealer trying to survive, but the makings of a kingpin were there, hiding behind a polite demeanor and a low-key presence. By 95, Craig Pettis was just 18, but already knee-deep in the game. South Memphis had its own hierarchy, and the man at the top was an acquaintance, someone Pettis and his cousin Antonio Big Wayne Allen both knew well. That dealer was moving serious weight until he got jammed up in March 1995. His Chevrolet Lumina was impounded with $500,000 in cash stashed in the hidden compartment. From behind bars, the dealer made a desperate call, promising Allen a cut if he can snatch the money before the feds found his secret compartment. But Big Wayne was built heavy, too clumsy to scale the fence and climb into the car yard. So he tapped Pettis, who was smaller and more agile. Craig slid over the fence, popped the Lumina, and came back with the money. But instead of living up to the deal, Pettis and his cousin double-crossed the dealer. They kept the money, chopped it down amongst themselves, leaving Pettis with enough money to purchase large quantities of dope. Craig flipped the cash and reinvested back into the hustle. Soon, his numbers dwarfed every corner dealer around him. Money stacked quick, but with money came envy. He wasn't just a kid slinging rocks anymore. He had come up, commanding the Memphis branch of the Gangster Disciples. See, what started as a teenager's come up was changing into one of the largest and most feared drug empires West Tennessee had ever seen. It was around then when he locked in with his cousins, Clinton Goldie Lewis, just 18, and Martin M. Lewis, 20. They weren't just family, they became his lieutenants, loyal to the bone. Together, they laid the foundation for a crew that would soon spill blood and move millions. Around this time, he started traveling beyond Memphis to expand his supply lines. He ended up in Corpus Christi, Texas, a Gulf Coast hub that already served as a staging ground for Mexican dope coming into the U.S. It was there that Pettis was introduced to Edgar Valdez, better known by his nickname, La Barbie. Light skin, green eyes, always smiling like trouble didn't exist, but beneath that smiling face was a killer. La Barbie was a Texas-born trafficker who rose to prominence as a top enforcer and trafficker for Mexico's Beltran Leyva organization, which was an offshoot of the Sinaloa Cartel. Through this meeting, Pettis gained access to direct cartel supply, cutting out middlemen and local distributors. Instead of hustling ounces or even kilos, Pettis now had the ability to move hundreds of kilos of cocaine and tons of marijuana directly from cartel sources into Memphis. At one point, a single haul hit 5,500 pounds, worth $50 million. This was the pivot point. Pettis went from a Memphis player to a cartel franchisee. Valdez provided not just drugs, but the infrastructure: Mexican transporters, stash houses, tractor trailers with hidden compartments, everything that Pettis needed to flood Tennessee and surrounding states. But it wasn't just drugs that changed him. Pettis picked up something else from La Barbie: the code of violence. La Barbie was infamous for his ruthlessness in Mexico: beheadings, executions, terror carved into stone. Pettis brought that same energy back to Memphis. When someone whispered, when someone threatened the empire, Pettis didn't hesitate. Death was just another line item in the business. That connection in Texas was the fuse. What started with a skinny kid in Riverside hustling quarters was now tied straight into the cartel's heartbeat. From that moment on, Memphis wasn't just a city with drug dealers. It was a distribution hub in the Mexican pipeline, and Craig Pettis was the man at the controls. The violence followed supply. Pettis wasn't about to let anyone threaten his climb, and with South Memphis being full of sharks, snitches, rivals, and even cousins who thought blood would protect them, Pettis proved otherwise. When Antonio Big Wayne Allen, the same cousin who plugged him into that $500,000 score, was suspected of talking too freely, Pettis didn't hesitate. From Mexico, he ordered Allen's death. 10 rounds tore through Big Wayne's body in the spring of 2002. The man who helped Craig become a boss was now being carried out in a casket. And in a dark twist, Pettis and the trigger man stood over the casket as pallbearers. That was Craig's message to Memphis. No one was untouchable. 6 murders would eventually be tied to his command. Each one meant to plug leaks or erase threats. Rivals were shot down in their garages, hit while eating lunch, or gunned down in cars. He didn't pull the trigger himself because he didn't have to. He had the killers on call, talking men who lived for the blood. Pettis watched from a distance, calm, calculated. His name stayed off the streets, but the bodies carried his signature. On April 4th, 2001, what should have been just another night of chaos at home turned into a crack in the armor. Pettis' girlfriend, Latasha Booker, called the cops after a fight inside an acquaintance's house. When police arrived, they didn't need a warrant. The smell hit them as soon as they got to the door. A search turned the place upside down, and out came 3 duffel bags packed with 650 pounds of weed. Pettis and several others were taken in, and though the judge hit him with $250,000 bond, Craig peeled off the cash without blinking. The charges later disappeared, dropped for reasons never made clear. By the summer of 2002, law enforcement was circling closer. In Bartlett, a Memphis suburb, police raided a house tied to Pettis' crew and found 84 pounds of cocaine stashed in the attic. Nearly $1 million worth on the streets. That bust forced the feds to make their move. In November 2002, Pettis was indicted. The DEA now convinced he and his people weren't just neighborhood hustlers anymore. They were the primary pipeline for marijuana and cocaine into Memphis. In 2002, when indictments came down, Pettis slipped out of Memphis like a ghost and resurfaced south of the border. Mexico became his new kingdom. He rented a villa in an upscale enclave, rolling with cartel protection. He learned Spanish, carried stacks of cash, and lived like a narco prince. When stopped by police, they ended up apologizing and letting him ride away. He believed he was untouchable. But paranoia followed him. He knew cartel ties cut both ways. Wherever you put me, they'll kill me, Pettis warned, aware that betrayal or prison could both mean death. For 5 years, he lived in the shadows of Querétaro, always looking over his shoulder. In January 2008, the walls closed in. Mexican forces swarmed his neighborhood before dawn, snipers on rooftops, a helicopter circling, and troops in the street. Pettis tried to talk his way out, speaking in Spanish, offering a bribe. But the raid was already locked in. His 4 young kids were pulled away by child services as Pettis was dragged out in cuffs. Back in Memphis, he pleaded guilty to 19 federal charges, including 4 murders. The government had flipped over 40 of his people, and there was no escape. In 2013, the gavel dropped, 9 life sentences without parole. U.S. Attorney Edward Stanton called him the ringleader of one of the largest and most violent criminal organizations to ever operate in the state of Tennessee. The DEA said Pettis' empire was successfully dismantled. The streets, they kept his name alive on t-shirts, with young hustlers bragging about chasing that Pettis money, even as others swore they wanted him dead. Pettis was proof of what the drug game gives and what it takes. A skinny kid from Riverside who climbed fences for cash ended up controlling the cartel pipeline and bathing his hometown in blood. In the end, he lost it all. The money, the freedom, the family. The myth of Craig Pettis is still talked about in Memphis, half cautionary tale and half street legend.